Okay, I'd like to open this meeting of the Town of Blackstone Board of Zoning Appeals in regards to Waukesha Development requesting, a variance in section 1.2 of the Blackstone zoning ordinance. And Philip, you probably want to tell us about it?
Yeah, it's, I don't know if I heard you correctly, but it's 13-1.2 of the Blackstone zoning ordinance, which establishes the number of parking spaces for different activities, commercial activities and that sort of thing. And it does say in our current zoning ordinance that in residential districts, so it's across the spectrum, in residential districts, 2 off-site parking spaces are to be provided for each unit, okay? And remember, a unit is whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and irregardless, it doesn't specify what a unit is definitively, so it could be a 5-bedroom house or it could be a 1-bedroom apartment. And David is here representing Waukesha Development. He has a valid contract to purchase the property. He is here as the contractee and or the contractor, I'm not sure. He is in the process of attempting to buy the property. He does have a valid contract with the owners, and David is here and would like to vary or have you guys consider a variance after public hearing from 2 spaces to 1.5. So it's not a dramatic difference, and it would be comparable to the request that was made for the loft apartments, which was from 2 to 1.5 as well. And the property is located, if you guys aren't familiar, on 2nd Street adjacent to the loft properties, okay? There is a vacant lot directly behind Kangaroo, and that's not the lot. It's the one that, if you're looking at the front door of the lofts from 2nd Street, it would be on the left-hand side to the east, okay? We have notified all the adjoining property owners and adjacent property owners, and I have not received a contact except for one individual whose property did not actually abut, but they had seen the advertisement in the newspaper. I'm just curious because they saw 2nd Street and their property was some distance away, but I have not received any commentary from adjacent property owners. Okay. We open a public hearing?
Please, yes.
Well, by code, we are required, and we have duly advertised a public hearing to be held tonight, and the public hearing will allow anybody who may have issues, or if you'd like to hear from Mr. McCormick directly, we are required to do that. And as you guys may or may not know, some of y'all kind of knew, the Board of Zoning Appeals is an appointment. That's why you had to go to the clerk of the circuit court's office. This is an appointment by the circuit court judge. And so your decision would be final, and any appeal would be taken directly to the circuit court. So this would give Mr. McCormick, whatever way you go, a final determination without having to go back to the board or the town council.
2 clarifying questions, Philip, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
The loft, when we gave that variance 4 years ago, David? 5? Was it?
And it was before my time, so it was about 8 years ago.
About 8 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Have we had any issues with offering that variance? I mean, have we had any parking issues?
There haven't been any compelling requests, and I haven't received anything from any of the tenants or any of the property owners. It seems to have been pretty peaceful over there. I haven't had anybody complain to me about it.
This is right behind us.
Yeah. Enclosed in your packet, you have a diagram of the proposed improvements, and what's being proposed is 34 apartment units. The property is currently zoned for R3 or heavy residential, so we're not, again, considering whether apartments are appropriate. We're considering whether a reduction in the overall number of parking spaces is appropriate. And gosh, that was rezoned probably 5 years ago.
Questions or?
I have a question. As far as the apartments, what are the efficiency apartments? How many people will be able to occupy? Is it what? Because I read 2 different things in here.
Sure, I can give you a little bit of background. So my name is Dave McCormick. I'm the owner of Waukesha Development. I'm also the owner of the Blackstone Lofts, and I can't believe it's been that long. It's amazing, but. That project's been really successful for us. We also learned a lot of lessons from that property, in that we are realizing who the tenants are, who, what people want out of a building. But also, before we did that, there was no Fast C. So I'm the one who rezoned that property actually, and it was when Fast C was first announced, and then there was some hedging on part of the government. We didn't know what was going on, so I had to let it go at that time. But now that we know what's going on, and have some good information and data about who's coming to town, I think there's a great opportunity, but it's a weird opportunity because the per diems that they provide for hotels makes it a little difficult. It's a little low on the low end for a per diem for a hotel owner, but it's not set up because of the short-term nature of the rentals and the people staying here for real a typical apartment setup like we do at the lofts. So I wanted to just tweak the model a little bit and try to capture those people who would be coming through on more of a short-term basis. Some of those folks who would be coming, they're still very high credit quality tenants, but who would otherwise go off and stay in Chesterfield or somewhere else and keep them in Blackstone and have them go to eat and things around here. But they are transient in the sense that they might be here during the week and then go home to Alexandria or during the weekend or whatever. So I don't really see it as the kind of thing where we're going to need overflow parking for guests or children, or like a second car for two parents or anything like that. I just really see it as a very specific kind of tenant who's going to be maybe working in some capacity on Fort Lee and would need this type of an efficiency type of apartment, but still a functioning apartment, just slightly smaller, to give them what they need to rent right in town.
If I may very quickly, Dave, you're estimating one-bedroom apartments?
All one beds,
All
yeah.
one bedroom.
I myself is a retired military, and I have utilized facilities like you're talking about. So will those facilities that you're talking about preparing, will they be, or could they be for long term?
They could be,
Okay, because around here, everybody is looking for new and upgrades. So you probably will end up getting some long term.
And that's really ideal. That for us, the longer you get stability out of the length of these contracts in the form of our leases. So that's ideal for us. I just want to be set up, to kind of be able to capture a few different types of tenant. But that's a great point, and if we can get a long-term lease out of it, it's all the better.
What is the per diem rate? Because I used to get like 33 a day.
Well, from my understanding, it's 125 total, but that's broken up between hotel and meals.
Lodging and meals.
Yeah, and so, I don't pretend to know the hotel business or anything, but I do have a very higher level sense of it and what they need to make a hotel work, and that's on the low end if you have your standard vacancy. So I'm looking at it. I'm just trying to. It's kind of a new model. I don't really know of anything else like it. I operate something like this very similar in Petersburg, because I have maybe 300 units or so in Petersburg. But we always kept hearing from folks who went to Fort Lee who just needed something for 6 months or for 3 months, and they're great tenants. But you have to set up that building in such a way where you can accommodate the turnover. And so we furnish the units. We do everything all-inclusive and just make something really nice so when people are here, they feel like there's something for them in Blackstone, and then we find that they just walk out and go to the restaurants and spend their money in town, which is really nice.
So these would be furnished?
Uh-huh. Yes,
So
sir.
would you have enough space that if you needed additional parking, you would have it? The reason why I'm saying is 'cause I'm ex-military too, and I'm saying that if you needed some additional parking, would you have enough to accommodate it?
Well,
With just 1.5 space.
The property itself is slightly constrained. It's kind of an odd-shaped property. It doesn't just go straight back to the next road over. So we were trying to fit this thing in such a way. You got to have all the drive aisles and all the curb cuts and everything. That even though it might appear that we theoretically have the room, it's hard to find space where you can have the drive aisles and all access to all those components of the property. So we went through a few different iterations of this, and it sounds simple, but it's really the way it lays out the most efficiently. So theoretically, we have a little more room on the site, but it's hard to get access to all that and pave it for access for more cars and things like that. So.
But it looks like you do have 51 spots for the
yes.
34 apartments.
that's
So
17 overflow?
Well, it would-
If
17,
Per
yeah.
one person, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad we were talking about the lofts. Obviously, this is right next door, the Blackstone lofts. We've never had a parking issue there. We have an excess of spaces, and really, it's the same kind of tenant. It's a little bit different than we're talking about, but we have not really had a need for any overflow or excess parking. The 1.5 space works great. In fact, that's the standard for what we use at all our other properties. Say in Petersburg or lots of other places, 2 to 1 is actually pretty onerous when it comes to 1-bedroom units. So Blackstone is somewhat unique in that regard.
So, these are 1-bedroom units. Are you contracting with people who would handle housing for Fort Pickett? Is it that kind of thing, or is it individuals coming out looking for a place?
It's individuals. We contract with Access Realty here in town, is who does our leasing, and Liz has some contacts on the base. We're talking, for instance, to Joe. Joe's over there, has a program where he does some contracting through larger subcontractors to the military. So there's all these different needs. It's great in a small town like this. You can kind of have direct conversations with lots of different people, but there's no direct contracting with the military itself.
What I was thinking of is as Fast Tag comes in, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Well, what I was thinking of is Fast Tag comes in, as more people come in to Pickett, if it was going to be possibly like a 2-man place, like one unit with 2 people in it coming in from different places, everybody having rental cars or personal cars or whatever, and there's some exercise going on Pickett. Are things going to start to overflow into the community would be my concern, but you're saying it's...
And I think that's a great question. I don't know that it's specific to this particular property, and I'm sure ultimately there might be a need for some of those 2-bed units. This is, I hope, one small project in what could be lots of projects for downtown, and we hope that it's a catalyzing project if we can show that it works. I know a big concern is those people might not stay in town, might go to Chesterfield or some of these communities, even Petersburg. So, it sounds, from what I can tell from the numbers, that there's going to be a pretty big influx to Pickett. So the question is, how do we keep them in town, but do that in an orderly fashion? So I don't know how to exactly address that, but I think there may be a need ultimately for 2-bed units sometime down the road.
So will there be 2 bedrooms?
Not in this particular property. This is set up just as 1-beds.
I'd like to ask there's entrance to this parking area from 2nd Street and from 3rd Street. Will there be one-way entrance and exit, or just can you go, both ways on both streets?
Our
Is it
preference
gonna
is
be wide enough?
to do 2-way. But this will ultimately come down to a civil engineering question and what we can fit on there. Right now, what we've done is what I would just call a parking study.
Gotcha.
But we need to get very specific with that through our civil engineering folks, and I think we can fit that, but we'll see. I know that there might be a little tiny wetlands piece on there we got to figure out and just do some of that work, but we'll figure out what's up with that.
Would this work together with the loft that the parking actually, if there's overflow from one, utilize at the loft and vice versa? I mean, is the parking gonna back up to each other that way?
Well, I guess we have not planned it that way. I don't really want to intermingle the two. I don't see any need to do that right now. It's really, coincidental and lucky that I'm right next door.
Right.
And we control both. And so if we ever did need that, but I haven't, in all the years of owning the loft property next door, we would think we'd have more of a need on that piece. We've never had that issue or any need for overflow. So I haven't planned on that.
Anybody have any more questions?
If I may, just as a matter of procedure, if we could open a public hearing, if somebody may want to have a word, and then close the public hearing, just as a matter of formality, if you
Right.
don't mind, Madam Chairman.
Well, thank you very much for your consideration.
Sure.
Mr. Green may have some comments, but if you'll go through the motions, open a public hearing, close the public hearing.
Okay, it's open already, correct?
I don't know if there was actually a.
Yeah.
You have opened it.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any comments? All right. I'll close this public hearing then, and not hear anything, call for the question, which would actually be, the request being that we grant a variance to section 13-1.2 of the Blackstone zoning ordinance. And this is allowing 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling on the Second Street property that's proposed by Waukesha Development. So,
And this is based on the site plan that's been submitted to you?
correct.
The number of units.
So I guess we would need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any more comment, questions? All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. It's pretty cut and dry.
We good, unanimous?
Work? All right, this hearing will definitely come to a close then.
Will you adjourn the meeting?
I will adjourn the meeting at 5:55, is that 5:50?
48.
That was
Oh, that was at 5:47. We will adjourn this meeting.
I'll be right back.
All right.
Hold on.